the most brutal torture methods used in ancient history. Trial by river. In ancient Mesopotamia, under the Code of Hammurabi, an accused person could be sentenced to the river ordeal. They were thrown into the Euphrates, and the river itself decided the verdict. Sinking meant guilt, and drowning was simply the sentence carrying itself out. Surviving meant the gods had declared them innocent, and they walked away free. It's ranked last because for a strong swimmer, this punishment could end in nothing worse than a soaking. But if you couldn't swim, guilty or not, the outcome was the same. Falaka, also called bastinado, was common across ancient Persia and Egypt. The victims' ankles were bound together and raised, and the soles of their feet were beaten with a rod or cane. The feet contained some of the densest nerve clusters in the human body, so the pain was extreme even though the injury usually wasn't. Done in excess, it could leave someone unable to walk for weeks, but almost nobody died from it, which is exactly why it sits this low on the list. The Flagrum. Roman executioners used a whip called the Flagrum, a handle with several leather thongs, each one tipped with small pieces of bone or metal. It was standard practice before a crucifixion, designed to weaken and humiliate the victim before their execution even began. The metal fragments tore through skin and muscle with every strike, and some prisoners never made it to the cross at all. Rome didn't invent scourging, but they turned it into a science. Assyrian Mutilation. Assyrian law codes, some of the oldest legal texts on earth, prescribed mutilation as punishment for crimes like adultery and slander. A nose, an ear, or lips could be sliced off, permanently marking the person as a convicted criminal. It wasn't meant to kill. It was meant to follow you for the rest of your life. Every person you passed on the street would know exactly what you'd done. The Furca. The Furca was a forked wooden yoke locked around a person's neck and wrists, most often used to punish slaves in ancient Rome. Bound in it, the victim was paraded through public streets while being whipped, unable to defend themselves or even lower their arms. It rarely killed anyone. The goal was total public humiliation, making sure everyone in the city watched it happen. Live burial. Both ancient Sparta and ancient China used live burial to punish deserters and traitors. Victims were placed in a pit and buried, sometimes up to the neck, sometimes completely, and left there. Death came slowly from thirst or from exposure to the elements. There was no quick version of this one. Whoever ordered it wanted the victim to have time to think about what was coming. The 5 punishments. Ancient Chinese legal codes under the Zhou and Qin dynasties formalized a system called the 5 punishments. Depending on the severity of the crime, a person could be tattooed on the face, have their nose sliced off, lose a foot, be castrated, or be executed outright. Each punishment was a fixed legal category, written into law, applied by rank of offense. This wasn't chaotic cruelty, it was cruelty with paperwork. Impalement. Stone reliefs from the Assyrian capital at Nineveh show rows of impaled prisoners lined up outside conquered cities. Captives were driven onto sharpened stakes, sometimes positioned to avoid vital organs, so death came slowly, over hours or even days. This wasn't hidden. It was carved into palace walls and displayed for everyone leaving the city to see. Surrender fast, or this happens to you next. Boiling alive. Ancient Chinese texts describe execution by cauldron, where a condemned official convicted of treason was lowered alive into boiling water or oil. The extremities went in first, the most nerve-dense parts of the body, before the rest of the victim followed. It was reserved for the most serious crimes against the state, and it was meant to be as slow as the executioner wanted it to be. Crucifixion. Crucifixion likely began with the Persians, was adopted and refined by the Carthaginians, and was eventually perfected by Rome into a public deterrent. Victims were nailed or tied to a wooden cross and left to die slowly from exhaustion and suffocation, a process that could stretch on for days. Crosses lined major roads leading into cities, a warning to every traveler passing through. It became one of the most feared executions in the ancient world for exactly that reason. Scaphism. The Greek writer Plutarch described a Persian execution method known as the boats. A prisoner was trapped between 2 hollowed vessels with only their head, hands, and feet exposed, then force-fed milk and honey until sickness set in. Left in the sun, covered in sweetness, the victim became a target for insects, and the process reportedly stretched on for over 2 weeks. Historians still debate how literally to take the ancient accounts, but the reputation alone made it one of the most feared punishments in the Persian world. Flaying. Assyrian palace reliefs don't shy away from this one. Captured rebels and rival rulers were flayed alive, their skin peeled from their bodies while they were still conscious. Because skin has relatively few major blood vessels, victims could survive the process far longer than you'd expect, dying eventually from shock or infection rather than blood loss. Sometimes the skin itself was nailed to the city gates afterward, so no one who saw it needed an explanation. Aztec heart extraction. Aztec priests carried out ritual sacrifice atop stepped temples, using an obsidian blade to cut through the diaphragm and remove the heart while it was still beating, offered up to the sun god. The physical act itself was fast. What made it brutal was everything around it. Victims were often kept fully conscious and aware, marched up in front of massive crowds, fully understanding what was about to happen to them in the final moments before the priest reached in. Damnatio. Rome didn't just execute condemned criminals and prisoners of war, they staged it. Damnatio Ad Bestias, condemnation to the beast, meant being thrown unarmed into an arena with lions, bears, or leopards, while tens of thousands of Romans watched from the stands. There was no fast version of this. The terror stretched out for the entertainment of the crowd, and the arena floor was built to make sure nobody in the audience missed a second of it. The Brazen Bull. Around 570 BC, a tyrant named Phalaris ruled the Greek city of Agrigentum in Sicily and commissioned a bronze bull from a craftsman named Paralaeus. Victims were sealed inside and a fire was lit beneath it, roasting them alive while the bull's hollow structure and specially designed nose pipes twisted their screams into what sounded like an animal bellowing. And in a detail almost too fitting to be true, ancient sources claim Phalaris tested it for the first time, not on a prisoner, but on Paralaus, the man who built it. If any of these surprised you, or you've got one from ancient history that should have made this list, drop it in the comments below.